Bold claim. A distant volcanic eruption may have jump-started the Black Death's invasion of Europe. When the plague ravaged Europe starting in 1347, it claimed more than half the population and upended societies and war alike. New research argues that an unseen volcanic event, or multiple eruptions, likely set the stage for the pandemic's arrival on European shores by triggering a cascade of changes that favored plague-carrying fleas. The study, published in Communications Earth and Environment, proposes a chain reaction. Sulfur-rich volcanic debris cooled global temperatures for several years, sparking a climate shift that devastated European harvests. As crops failed and fears of starvation rose, wealthy Italian city-states, such as Florence and Venice, began importing grain from distant sources. Those ships probably carried plague-infected fleas, helping the disease take hold on the continent. Florence's leaders did what they could to avert famine. Tens of thousands of refugees flowed into the city, which managed to feed them in addition to its own citizens. Yet these grain imports unintentionally opened Europe's doors to a deadly pathogen, according to Martin Borch, a medieval historian at the Leibniz Institute for the History and Culture of Eastern Europe, and one of the study's authors. They couldn't have imagined the danger that lay aboard those ships, he notes. The researchers say the episode illustrates how climate shifts can disrupt both human societies and animal ecosystems in unpredictable ways, with far-reaching consequences. For decades, scholars have debated the plague's origins and spread, but this analysis is among the first to detail a potential volcanic trigger. Earlier work connected climate change to plague introductions without specifying mechanisms, says Henry Fell, a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Nottingham and the University of York, who was not involved in the study, but has studied the Black Death and climate change. This paper is valuable for laying out a concrete mechanism, Fell says. We can trace grain trade surges from the ports, and the climate is the driver. Volcanic eruptions can chill the planet by injecting sulfur gases into the stratosphere, reducing sunlight, and cooling surface temperatures for years after a major eruption. To piece together 14th-century volcanic activity, the team examined tree rings, ice core records, and contemporary chronicles. All three aligned. A cool period and a Mediterranean famine from 1345 to 1347 preceded and accompanied the plague's appearance in Europe. Ice core analysis from Greenland and Antarctica helped establish the timing. The researchers found that 1345 bore the 18th strongest sulfur signal in the last 2 millennia, and that the stratospheric sulfur load for that year surpassed the record set by Mount Pinatubo in 1991. Tree rings from the same era show rare, blue rings, biological indicators of stress and cold spells, appearing consecutively, a sign of unusually harsh conditions. Contemporary accounts from China, Japan, Germany, France, and Italy describe diminished sunshine and increased cloudiness, the study adds. The researchers cannot pinpoint a single volcano responsible for 1345, but they do identify a tropical eruption as the likely source, Borch says, noting that polar ice cores show similar sulfate levels from hemispheres around the world. Crop failures and rising grain prices during that chilly phase affected large regions, including Spain, southern France, Italy, Egypt, and the eastern Mediterranean. At the time, Italian city-states were wealthy enough to store grain and maintain extensive trade networks, which became their vulnerability as famine deepened. As famine worsened, imports from the Black Sea region became essential. Borch says it's clear that Venice's records from 1349 reflect relief at the relief of famine via Black Sea grain, even as the plague was on the horizon. They were grateful for the grain, unaware of the danger on those ships, he remarks. Borch suspects the plague might have reached Europe eventually regardless, but volcanic-triggered events likely accelerated its arrival. During 1347 to 1353, Europe endured mortality rates as high as 60% in some areas, marking one of history's deadliest periods. Previous work on plague origins has leaned on chronicles, archaeology, and ancient DNA. In 2022, Scientists identified plague bacteria DNA in skeletal remains in what is now Kyrgyzstan, hinting at an origin in Central Asia long before Europe's outbreak. Follow-up research linked marmots bearing related strains near the Tian Shan range, suggesting a plausible ancestral source for the pandemic. The new study offers a narrative that connects climatic shocks to pestilence pathways, arguing that volcanic activity could be a plausible accelerant in the Black Death's European spread, according to Fell. After its initial surge, the plague persisted in Europe for centuries, continually reshaping history. In discussing the broader significance, Fell notes that a plague episode is almost intrinsic to European history. Any long-term study of Europe will inevitably encounter it, given its profound impact.